Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Wednesday, June 17th of 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square, Washington's state government reporter. And in today's episode, it pays to be a state employee in Washington. It pays a lot. The latest year we have numbers for state employee salaries is from last year, from 2025. They got another raise this year, but even the 2025 numbers are pretty impressive. And we, the taxpayer, are likely about to give them another fat raise as collective bargaining behind closed doors will begin soon. Then the girls, unfortunately, are getting younger and the traffickers more violent. We are talking about the reality of sex trafficking in King County. There's been a lot of attention to it lately because of the World Cup and then some of the pushback from folks who live up along that stretch of Aurora Avenue North, notorious for trafficking. So I had a conversation with Christine Moreland. She is the executive director of The More We Love, an organization dedicated to rescuing girls and young women from the sex trade, and not only rescuing them from them and offering shelter, but basically life skills and everything to completely transform, get out of that life and move on. Um, it's a pretty remarkable story that she has to share with you today. And then finally, Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank could be out of a job by the first of the year. We talked about this in yesterday's episode, how the Pierce County Charter Review Commission at its Monday night meeting changed Amendment C1. That's the amendment that will allow voters to decide in November if they'd like the office to be appointed rather than elected for sheriff. Well, they changed it, and now if voters end up adopting that, Keith Swank is out of a job by the first of the year. Would be only halfway through his term, his 4-year term that he was elected to, but he would be out of a job. So he has something to say about that in today's episode. Okay, let's start out. You and I are in the wrong business, or at least I am for sure, at least if we wanted to get rich. If you happen to be one of the state employees working at the University of Washington, or maybe at the Department of Corrections as a nurse, you're doing pretty well in many cases. We have about 154 to 156,000. I've seen some different numbers today, state employees that you, the taxpayer, pay their salary working in state government and for various agencies. Just go back a few years ago to 2023, and there were less than 126,000 state employees. So that means we have 30,000 more state taxpayer funded employees than we had just 3 years ago. That's a pretty remarkable increase and growth in state government. And we wonder why we're always in a deficit, right? Over 50% of all state employees' salaries go to higher education. The University of Washington alone, get this, they account for 41% of all state salaries. That is a huge percentage. And the highest paid UW employee is the head football coach. Not really a big surprise, right? He was paid $5.9 million last year. Actually, took a pay cut from the year before. That was kind of interesting. The head basketball coach of the University of Washington was paid $3.2 million last year. But there's even a professor on the campus who made more than $1 million last year. Now, Department of Corrections employees, you can see here, including nurses, check this out. Some of them made more than $400,000 last year. Now, of course, being a nurse at the Department of Corrections, working with inmates, that's a dangerous job, potentially justified salary, and some of that is likely coming from overtime pay. But there are a bunch of psychiatrists at corrections making well over $300,000. So in all, you've got state employee compensation generally accounting for between about 23 and 30% of the entire state budget. That's pretty remarkable. I knew it was a good chunk of the budget. I didn't know it was up to 30% of the entire budget is going to pay for state employees. Now, Ryan Frost is Washington Policy Center's Tax and Budget Policy Center Director. He told me this morning that in 2025, the state budget grew by nearly 2 billion just to cover the raises that state employees got. Let me say that again. The budget went up in 2025 by nearly 2 billion just to cover the raises that state employees got. So that's just the hikes.
Anybody who looked at the budget that passed in 2025, they saw that the biggest line item increase was state employee salary. And there were a lot of cuts to make up, to be able to fund that $2 billion, which is about what it was, just shy of $2 billion, just in net increases. So not the step increases that were already kind of built into a lot of the employee salaries. That was just like net new spending for the bargaining agreements. Um, they cut Medicaid, they cut the Department of Children, Youth, and Family. There's a lot of cuts they made to fund those. And so I think from the outside perspective, it's the problem is that when we're running multi-billion-dollar deficits, if a private company has no money, they don't then pass out $2 billion in employee raises. Only the state manages to do that. And this has been kind of an ongoing problem in Washington for a long time, is that we have zero seat at the table when those negotiations are being made. Every collective bargaining agreement made by the public employees are done with their unions and with the director of OFM, who's appointed by the governor. There's no taxpayer advocate at all. The legislators get this bargaining agreement in front of them, and it's either yes or no. They can't amend it. They can't do anything. So until, frankly, there's a seat at the table from the taxpayer perspective, and sorry, I don't believe that there is one now. I don't believe the governors and his representatives at the table have the taxpayers' best interests in mind. Then these types of things are just going to keep happening over and over again.
So, again, the issue here for many is transparency or lack thereof. Governor Bob Ferguson's Office of Financial Management Director goes in behind closed doors, and I'm sure some of her staff as well, and they sit with union leadership, Washington State Federation for State Employees, and other union leaders. And I don't know how it works. If the union guys go in and say, "This is what we want, this is what we demand," and then OFM responds on behalf of the governor and says, "Yeah, that's too much. We can't really afford it this year. We're in another budget deficit, as I'm sure you're aware." How that negotiation goes, we don't know. We don't even have an opportunity to find out, even through public records requests. So it's all done in secret.
There's not a state that's more secretive than Washington's, in the fact that we have zero light. We can't shine a single light into how that negotiation goes. You can't even like PDR those negotiations to see what the process was, what the starting point was, what the negotiation ended up being. Was there actually even a negotiation, or did they just give what they wanted? I'm sure there are other states. I'm sure there's some other large states. I don't know how California does theirs, but I imagine it's much different than ours. But there's not a way to keep it hidden from the taxpayers more than the way that we do it.
Now, Frost and WPC told me that since 2022, just 4 years ago, compensation for state employees has gone up about 30%. That's in just 4 years. That is remarkable. You didn't get that at your job, I'm guessing. Probably not. Not even a cost of living raise, maybe. We all should have been government employees. The other significant conflict here is that these union groups are the ones that give large campaign donations to the governor and Democratic leadership and their campaigns. It certainly could present the appearance, at least, of a conflict of interest. Again, we don't get to find out what goes on behind those closed doors in collective bargaining for state workers, but it's your money on the line. And as you heard Ryan Frost at WPC say, other states don't do it like this. Why we have a complete and total lack of transparency here? Maybe it's something that lawmakers should consider amending. And now to a difficult subject that has been in the news a lot lately: sex trafficking and related crime. The fact is, the girls being trafficked are younger now, and the sex traffickers are more violent. Christine Moreland is the executive director of an organization called The More We Love. They are really at the center in King County of the rescue effort. They have a shelter in Renton. They are at max capacity currently. She told me this morning they took 128 crisis calls in 12 days earlier this month. That is pretty incredible. In many cases, that's a police officer calling her up in the middle of the night saying, I've got, this girl, I just picked her up off Aurora. She's in the back of my cop car. Instead of taking her to jail, she says she's ready to get out of the life. Can you help? That's really how it goes down in many cases. So they rescue women and children in homelessness and currently have 22 women and 29 children at their facility, which is fully funded by private donations. Here is part of my conversation with Christine Moreland from The More We Love.
We are beyond capacity. So we have actually we operate right now out of a facility that will allow for us to expand. So we are currently at the 32 beds, but we are looking at expanding up to the full capacity of 109 beds. And the real intention in doing that is first and foremost giving the women and children a longer term stay. So we don't want to just be checking boxes and meeting the crisis, but we really want to stabilize and give pathways to employment and housing. And in order to do that, we need to be able to have access to more bed space so that we can keep them with us longer. And then we also want to respond to the crisis that we know we have right now in Washington State, and that is that we do not have any youth beds or any beds available for young girls who are being exposed to trafficking. And because we are, number 2 right now in the country for children being exploited, especially out on Aurora, I feel it's our responsibility to the community to expand our shelter beds to accommodate youth. So that is our next mission.
Now, Mike Dunn of Dunn Lumber, notoriety, of course, if you've been in Washington any length of time, you know about Dunn Lumber, especially if you've done any construction, right? He's among one of the big donors for The More We Love. He really believes in their mission and rescuing these girls and women and putting lives back together. And Dunn recently paid to put this sign up along a stretch of Aurora Avenue North in Seattle to discourage buyers of sex, really. One of the signs reads, my dad was buying girls my age, 16. He no longer felt safe to me. Real daughter of a sex buyer. That was not a manufactured graphic marketing scheme. That really came, from a girl talking about her dad, finding out that he was buying sex. And Moreland crafted that message, she says, very intentionally based off interviews she's had with some of the Johns who've, gotten out of the life over the years. And many of them, she told me, said the only thing that would have stopped me, the only thing that would have deterred me is if somebody that I'm close to, somebody that I love, found out what I was doing. Being discovered would be the thing that would make you want to give that up, right? The shame of being found out really was the deterrent. And so that's why the marketing scheme is what it is. And that's why that sign is up along Aurora Avenue North. I've been seeing a lot of people posting about it on social media. It's garnered a lot of interest, even nationally. It's an interesting approach. So whether or not it's effective in deterring buyers remains to be seen. So that sex trafficking stretch there along Aurora Avenue North, that's not new. It's been bad for, of course, decades up there. It's considered to be probably the second most prolific area for the sex trade in the entire nation, from what I'm told. Moreland told me city and county officials are to blame. In her opinion, they are basically promoting, allowing all of this to continue when they have the tools that they could use to shut it down.
I'll just point out the obvious. It is our policy. It is our lack of ability in Washington State to hold the traffickers, those that are exploiting these young girls, the gangs, the pimps, truly accountable for selling human bodies, but not just human bodies, our babies, our girls, our daughters, our sisters, right? I mean, the fact that you can purchase a human being, and that is a misdemeanor charge rather than a felony charge. And if we just made that one adjustment right there, it could start to lower the demand. But unfortunately, our policy isn't working in the favor of protecting the young girls that are being exploited out here. And the level of violence that they endure, I would just say, a politician or anybody who is otherwise fighting against some of these laws that could really protect our girls, spend a day out on the track, spend a day out on Aurora, just talk to some of these young women who are being violated and victimized at the highest level. It's shameful. I think the other piece of it is that we do have a cattle call. I've said this a couple times, but I don't know. Try not to involve myself in social media too much, but unfortunately it's just our world. And the other day my son was on TikTok and he sent me over a TikTok and it was a pimp and he was in the middle of Aurora and he was cattle calling, bring your girls here, exploit your girls here. This is where the pimping is good. And, our gun charges are less. You can have multiple gun charges before those are taken off your hands, or you spend multiple days, even a night or two in jail. It's a criminal zone. We're enabling it, completely enabling it.
One of the frustrations Moreland shared with me in our conversation on Tuesday is the fact that the King County Prosecutor's Office desperately wants to go after these traffickers. It takes a lot of resources to do that, right? And the King County Prosecutor's Office reached out to the King County Council last year ago this time, actually, it was June of 2025, and said, we need at least 2 more prosecutors in our office to handle these cases. They have a backlog of a ton of these cases, and they were denied, basically told there's no money for it. She was extremely frustrated about that. So I reached out to the King County Council today to ask about that. And Councilman Reagan Dunn's chief of staff, Cody, confirmed information for me. He said, yes, in fact, he sent me a document via email showing that Lisa Mannion in the King County Prosecutor's Office shared frustration initially back in June when they made the request. And then in October, when she found out they're not going to get the prosecutors they need to go after these traffickers, she was extremely frustrated. What she asked for, and I'll just read this so I don't mess this up. She says, the PAO, that's the prosecuting attorney's office, respectfully requests 2 case development specialists to assist law enforcement in their investigation and identification of the individuals working to exploit and abuse victims. She went on to talk about the amount of time and effort it takes, a lot of hours to, go back through social media on these cases and really get at the worst of the worst offenders. But it's not being funded at this point by the King County Council. And Christine Moreland at The More We Love, hugely frustrated. She says, where are our priorities, right? Especially when you've got the public defender's office in King County to provide free of charge public defense for the criminals. On the prosecution side, they aren't getting the resources that they need to really go after these players and save these girls. I mean, that's really what it is all about. I also learned yesterday that Christine Moreland and The More We Love is actually partnered with Andrea Suarez and We Heart Seattle. They're We Heart Seattle and Andrea Suarez, the group that's really trying to get at helping the addicts on the streets of Seattle, get them into recovery and then housing, and partner with them long term, rather than do the housing first model that many cities are having to move away from because of pressure from the federal government. But it's pretty impressive to see those two working hand in hand. I wanted to put up a last minute update to this story I just got right before we are recording today's podcast, because yesterday on Wednesday, Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson put out a press release about a recent emphasis patrol up along that stretch of Aurora Avenue, where there's been a street takeover by people that are just simply fed up with the fact the city is allowing this to continue. So part of the release she put out said this: during the effort, this emphasis patrol, 3 minors were identified and connected with protective services. 10 adults were transported to access shelter, advocacy, and other support services. As part of the effort to prevent the sexual exploitation of minors, investigators identified 6 individuals seeking to exploit children. Those individuals were arrested and charged with felony offenses. I think that's actually a pretty big deal, and it would not have happened if the folks weren't demanding that law and order be restored in their community. So, hats off to the mayor for responding and this emphasis patrol that went down. Some arrests made. Hopefully, the prosecution will follow through. That's the problem. Oftentimes, these cases linger for weeks, months, some cases years without prosecution. And then you can't even go after the guy that you originally, knew to be a prolific trafficker. But it's something. It's encouraging. Now, finally, Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank could, in fact, be out of a job by the first of the year if voters approve an amendment that is headed for the November ballot. It was on Monday night, the Pierce County Charter Review Commission amended a proposal C1, that will go to the general election. Originally just contained language to say, do you want the office of the sheriff in Pierce County to be an appointed rather than elected position? That would mean that the Pierce County executive would be deciding who he wants his sheriff to be, who's aligned with his morals and values and politics, rather than having the people decide. But at the last minute, a change was put up by one of the commission members. It was Justin Layton, who serves District 7. That's Gig Harbor and Key Peninsula and that kind of surrounding area. And he added the language to terminate Keith Swank's 4-year term early, 2 years early. It would be terminated January 1, 2027, if in fact voters approved that amendment. So in a phone interview that I had yesterday with Commissioner Layton, he kind of told me, well, it's up to voters to decide if they want to make this an appointed or elected position, and basically said it's their prerogative as commission members to change any amendment that's going to the voters any way they so choose. And then he said this will be an up or down vote. He's made no secret of the fact he's not a fan of Keith Swank, nor is Sheriff Swank a fan of his.
And then I look at that and say, well, overwhelmingly, in the areas that the Pierce County Sheriff's Office polices, they're supportive of me. The people who voted to get me to have me removed from office or make it appointed, they're in areas we don't even police. They're not in unincorporated. They're in Tacoma. They're in Gig
Right.
Harbor. They're in,
Right.
places that we don't police at all. And so the whole thing is these people get to have a say on what the people in unincorporated Pierce County get stuck with whenever they want to be stuck with me because they support me overwhelmingly here. So hopefully the people will speak up, and even in Spanaway Parkland, which is a Democrat area. But I did very well over there, and maybe I'll do well again this time with this election coming up.
So again, that Amendment C1 will be on the ballot this November for Pierce County voters. Swank told me one other thing I want to share with you that I thought was interesting. The commission members who are supporting, kind of trying to push him out of this office, most of them represent parts of Pierce County that are not even where the Pierce County Sheriff's Office works from, right? Because they respond to calls in unincorporated Pierce County. Otherwise, if it's the city of, Tacoma, if it's the city of University Place, you've got a local police department there who 9 times out of 10 will be the responding agency. So he said, here you've got these guys that want to push me out, even though I don't work and operate. My officers don't operate in their district. So that's interesting. There are many other potential amendments headed to the ballot for voters in Pierce County. It's every 10 years that the Pierce County Charter Commission kind of gets to decide how they want to rewrite their charter, basically like the county constitution, if you will. Every 10 years, they get to decide, yeah, let's change this, let's change that, let's amend this, let's ask voters this. So they're kind of taking this opportunity here in 2026 to ask Pierce County voters how they want the direction of the county to go. There are, again, many other amendments. None of those other ones have been finalized as yet, but we're going to be watching actions from the Pierce County Charter Review Commission. They've got another meeting tonight, by the way, so we'll let you know. So that's it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Wednesday, June the 17th. Check out the Center Square Washington page for these stories and more. Again, as always, appreciate you watching so much. Hope you'll join us again on Thursday.